Good afternoon. My name is Liz Kruger. I'm the chair of the New York State Senate Finance Committee. This is Friday, May 27th. We're having a second virtual meeting for the week. I'm joined by Tom O'Mara, the ranker of the Finance Committee meeting, and quite a number of members. And we are having this meeting in order to complete our assignment for nominees the governor's office has handed to us for people to be, if they pass our committee, to be moved to the floor of the Senate for confirmation next week. Only two of the nominees today will be appearing because they are new to positions that are paid employment positions. The remainder of the nominees will not need a personal interview today. Some of them are not paid positions. Some of them are continuing in existing positions. And a number of them went through a special meeting yesterday that was a merged meeting of the Transportation Committee, the Public Authorities Committee, and the Finance Committee, so that the members of those three committees did have an opportunity to interview them and ask questions yesterday. But let's start with the two new nominees. Um,
Chairwoman, if I could
of
just make
course.
if I could make a brief statement, please.
Sure.
My annual objection and concerns over the manner in which these nominees and appointments get rammed down our throat in the final week of session. As we all know, we probably do greater than 50% of all bills in the session in the last week or two of session, which in itself is a problem as far as I'm concerned. But then we pile on the governor's last second nominees onto this process, leaves us little to no time to vet these candidates and really get into their backgrounds. So therefore, I just object to this process and really hope we can improve this in years going forward. So we have from January to June to do these, or we can come back off session and do them. As most of these are reappointments, they stay in their positions until they're reappointed. There's no need to do them by this deadline. So that's my objection. Sorry to take your time.
Just to go on the record with you, Senator O'Mara, this is not a partisan issue. I share your concern. I have made my opinion known to the governor's office about why I did not want it to go this way this year with a new governor and to not continue the pattern of the previous governor and he would do exactly this. So I am hoping that the governor's office will hear both of us from both parties. And again, it's her first year. And so she was handed an enormous set of assignments for herself at very last minute. So I'm prepared to say, okay, Governor Hochul, when you come back for next year, we're all not going to be new at this and we're going to get it right next year because I completely agree with you. This is an unfair burden on all members of the legislature. And in fairness, it's also a burden on the appointees, just having to rush all of this at the last second. So thank you. With that, if anyone else wants to, Diane, did you want to speak? No. Okay.
No.
Okay. So Jalen, why don't you call up our first interviewee?
Yes, our first interviewee for today is Daryl Towns, member of the Board of Parole.
Thank you. Hi, Daryl. And what we do is ask you to present a little bit about yourself and why you think you are a qualified person for the position you're being nominated to.
Great, and thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. And I thank you for taking time to convene to consider this appointment for me. I know a bunch of faces, some that I served with, but I'll kind of let you know who Daryl Towns is. Well, I'm Daryl Towns. I'm a lifelong Brooklynite, a former member of the Assembly, served 18 years in the Assembly, and then went on to become the Commissioner for Housing and Community Renewal for a little bit over 5 years. I'm born into a family that believed public service is one of the most important things that you can do I'm the son of former Congressman Ed Towns and a school teacher, Gwen Towns. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force and have always given back to my community. I think that I'm qualified for this position because I'm one who has always believed in my faith of second chances. And I think that, you have an opportunity in order to continue to write chapters in your book until you're put to rest. And I've been one also who has not always done it the perfect way. I've had mistakes in my life as well, and understand that that did not define me. But I was able to continue on to take whatever process I needed in order to correct past judgments and to move forward in order to do great things. So I think that that's an opportunity that we need to present. Everyone needs to be given their day in court, as well as given their day in regard to their release procedures. So that's a short version of who Darrell Towns is and what I'd like to do in this capacity.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Darrell. And I'm looking for hands from any members who'd like to ask questions. I see Toby Stavisky. Oh, excuse me. I see Leroy Comrie first. Hi, Senator Comrie.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I just wanted to speak up that for Darrell Towns. He's been a person of great character, a person that I've come to depend on for mentoring and advice throughout my political career. He's a person that has shown great respect for community, great respect for people, and definitely in this role as a parole commissioner, and understanding that people have to have every opportunity to have be heard in a proper way so that their future can be determined in a way that's with compassion and understanding and also knowledge. So I think that while I agree with Senator O'Mara and Senator Krueger about the lateness of this process every year, this is one candidate that deserves to be appointed. So I would hope that I would recommend highly that he is nominated to be a commissioner of parole. I think that it's great that he still continues to, after being here for 18 years, still wanting to help out the state in a major way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you. Senator Patrick Gallivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Darrell. It's nice to see you.
Likewise.
It has been a while. I'd like to also share my concern that some of my colleagues have about the process, which of course, Darrell, is no fault of yours, but just wanted that on the record. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank and commend you, Darrell, for all your years of public service and the things that you've done throughout your career, really an exemplary career, and it should be appreciated by everybody in New York. This nomination, though, intrigues me, that it's you moving into an area that at least I'm not aware that you've ever been in. You move a little bit over into, it's mostly criminal justice, and I'm just kind of, I know you mentioned you're a believer in second chances, but can you expound a little bit more about what interested you about this position and how you think you'd be able to make a transition?
Well, again, thank you, Senator. And I think that that's a great question, fair question. Again, it's been about public service for me, of giving back and in every type of capacity. I think my experience from the legislature, as you know, you develop an expertise by looking at all of the legislation and laws that you create. So I've had the opportunity in order to be involved in decisions, high-level decisions. Also, being a lifelong Brooklynite, I know that from time to time, folks have situations where they need to be corrected from, and I think that I have a lens in my judgment in regard to believing that second chances are needed. And people have the opportunity in order to correct past mistakes and to move forward in a positive way. So I think that life experience, legislative experience are some of the things that make me qualified for this particular position.
What is your understanding of the role or the duties and responsibilities of a member of the Board of Parole?
Well, I mean, I think in general, it's an opportunity in order to look at individuals' opportunities in order to put forth life after their correction. That is a serious task because we have to make sure that people are ready for life beyond. But I do not think that it's a situation where people should be written off. So I'm prepared in order to take the time in order to look at the individual cases, listen to the individual stories in order to make those determinations.
The executive law, a portion of the executive law governs the Board of Parole, and it essentially lays out the areas of the things that are to be considered when one is, well, first it lays out the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Parole and the individual members, and then the things that must be considered, the factors that must be considered, and the balance, the standard against which those factors should be made for release. And I'm just curious, have you had a chance to review that portion of the executive law?
I am reviewing all, and as every position that I've taken within New York State, I'll take seriously and will come with my expertise that I've gathered throughout life. So I think I'm eminently prepared for this challenge.
Do you think that that if somebody does not meet the standards of release, that they still should be, that they should in fact then be released?
Well, Senator, I think that that's a hypothetical, and I think that it's hard to just make a general judgment on that. I think that what would make me an effective parole board member is the fact of being able to sit and look at individual cases. I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily all about the crime. I think it's about the time of the life spent before the incident, the time spent while in correction, and the time that can be devoted to correcting mistakes of the past. So I think that it's hard to just look at generalities, but I would have to look at the individual case in order to determine the way that I would think we proceed.
That's very fair, looking at the individual cases and making the determinations, and clearly that's what should be done. But the executive law is, it's both very specific, but also then is subjective. And it's specific in the way that it outlines the factors that one must consider when an incarcerated person is before them as an applicant for eligible for parole release. And the board must consider all of those factors. The law does not apply any weight to that. Then though, there is an actual standard of release that's written right into the law. And the law says if an individual does not meet that standard of release, then they shall not be released. But it becomes very subjective, and it is left to the Board of Parole to consider all those factors without a requirement of weight on any one of them, and then make their own determination whether they believe that they meet the standard. And I just, what I'm trying to get to is I want to be assured that you would follow what's required in the law. And clearly, if somebody meets the standard of release, they should be released. There is no question about it. And it is not all about the crime. I understand the concern that people have about focus on the crime as it relates to parole release decisions. But like I say, I want to be assured that you are going to abide by what's in the law when you make your decisions.
absolutely, I will, follow the guidelines and apply them to individuals in order to make determinations on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Thank you, Daryl. I'm all set, Chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gallivan. Senator Toby Stavisky.
Thank you. And thank you. I can't call you Mr. I've known you a long time, you and your family, and both your work in the Assembly and at the Division of Homes and Community Renewal, and done a great job, and I expect you'll do a great job here. Have one question, a general question. I received some material from a group called RAP, the Release Aging People in Prison Campaign. I'm sure you're familiar with the issue. And what is your reaction to their proposals?
I've only seen some of them. I've recently received some of the information. But again, I think the same way that I was discussing with Senator Gallivan, I think that it's hard to make blanket determinations. I think that each individual needs to hear have their case determined on their individual circumstances. So I do plan on putting in the time in order to look at each individual case and apply my best judgments going forward. But I do think that there is opportunity for redemption, and that folks have the ability to continue writing their story. And that's something I'm a firm believer in. That's the way I was raised. My faith kind of determines that. And I've actually seen it as a kid growing up in East New York. So that's the sense and sensibility that I'll bring to this position.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Stavisky. I believe Senator Tom O'Mara has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. Good afternoon, Daryl. It's nice to see you.
Likewise.
It was certainly a pleasure serving with you in the Assembly, and you had an exemplary record there, and certainly an impressive resume since then. I do share some of the concerns of Senator Gallivan in some missing components in your resume with regards to criminal justice. And if there's something I missed, do you have any experience either in criminal defense, criminal prosecution, or law enforcement that would give you some professional experience in this regard?
No, I don't have a background in law enforcement. However, I do have, through my time as a commissioner of housing, in creating opportunities for special needs housing, a component of that are returning citizens. So having had the opportunity in order to talk to experts on both sides of the issue, whether law enforcement or those advocating for parole release, have had those conversations in order to make determinations in regard to creating housing opportunities. Again, as a citizen of the state of New York, I think that there are opportunities where you come in through. So I don't think that in order to make critical decisions in these areas that you necessarily have to have a background as an attorney or law enforcement. I think that as a citizen of New York, you can make correct determinations. And I've had to do those, whether it was leading the over 1,000 people that I had to lead at Homes and Community Renewal. You have to make decisions. And it's not that you have had traditional training. You have to make those good judgments. I mean, I think that all of you on this Zoom have had those situations where you've been able to make determinations even though you've not had the traditional training. There are things that you pick up just through life.
Certainly the seemingly changing approach to parole in this state in recent years, starting under Governor Cuomo's parole boards, and a substantial number of released cop killers and other very, very violent criminals being released back into our neighborhoods. What is your response to all the publicity on these releases? And how is that going to weigh into your determinations going forward? It's certainly in light of the increasing crime situation we have across the state.
Yeah, I watch the news and I am aware of situations, but again, I think it's hard to talk in generalities. I mean, I think that you have to look at the individual circumstances. So it's hard for me just to, suggest positions hypothetically. I think that I would give the fair judgment to each individual's case that came before us in order to make a determination.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see other hands, but I do have a question, Daryl, and it was also brought to me by the same group that Toby mentioned. And for the record, while I think that Senator Salazar is still here with us, her committee did not meet, although she reviewed with members who all felt that they could support your nomination. So I think that some of the concern is that many questions may not have been asked of you anywhere. So 2 questions that I think are fascinating was, would you support allowing parolees to have representation in their parole hearings? And would you support parole hearings being made public? Any thoughts on that?
I think that I'm in a situation where going back to Senator Gallivan's question in regard to our roles as pointed out by the executive. Certainly, I know a number of you on this call and will leave those policy decisions to you and then look for that guidance in order to move me forward. But I'm going to stay in my lane and allow you to make those determinations about policy.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Diane Savino, I see her hand up. Hello, Diane.
Hey, Liz. So Daryl, it's good to see you again. I know you've got tons of experience and years of experience to help you in this new role. But I'm just curious, because one of the things I think that gets lost in the parole hearings might be sometimes the voice of the victim. So, or even the consideration of the crime. We all believe that the people, if they've served their time and they're eligible for parole, they should have the opportunity to apply. And then there's certain things that are weighed to determine whether or not they should be released early, right? And that's the job of the parole board. But there are some people who are released that just baffle some of us. And Senator O'Mara mentioned, people have been convicted of cop killing, but we recently had an individual released back to Staten Island who was convicted of a brutal murder of his 3-year-old daughter. I won't go into the details of it, they tortured this child, and he pled guilty to a lesser offense, blamed some of it on his wife, and that might be there may be some truth to that. 2 of them did act together, but it just, it's hard to explain to the public. And again, you didn't make this decision, you weren't on the board, but these things will come before you. But it's very difficult to explain to the community that he was sent back to, that this is a person who should have been considered for early release. The murder and torture of a 3-year-old child didn't seem like something that would have happened. And so those types of cases are going to come before you. And I'm just wondering how you're going to manage that, the effect it will have on the surrounding community, the underlying crime and its potential, the brutality that was displayed by that person. And you don't have to answer that, but this is something you're going to have to figure out, because these things will happen. You will have to make decisions based upon individuals who've been convicted or even pled guilty to some of these crimes. And victims and their families are sometimes as mystified as everyone around them. Like, why does this person get the opportunity to leave early? Maybe they shouldn't stay in prison forever, but why should they leave early? And so It's something for you to think about. If you want to respond, fine. If you don't, I just want you to realize that you're going to be coming up against some pretty, difficult decisions to make on the parole board.
Yeah, and thank you, and good to see you too, Senator. But I think that all of us in our individual capacities have hard and tough decisions to make. I've made them in the past, and I'm up to the challenge that may come forth in the parole board. And again, with my expertise and experience, we'll make those determinations where we have to make them. But certainly appreciate you, framing some of the things that I may be heading into.
Mhm. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Gustavo Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Daryl. Good to see you, sir.
Likewise, Senator.
So a couple of things. I mean, first, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the experience, and I know that some of my colleagues were wondering, since they didn't, as they said, they didn't necessarily think that you had this as part of your background. So they were wondering why you would be interested in this. So I wanted you to get, if you had an opportunity, if you wanted to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about maybe about your personal experiences that kind of led you to kind of think about, certainly you have the professional experience as a legislator, as a commissioner, as somebody who understands the law, because you're one of the folks who made the law. And certainly you have, as some of my colleagues already said, the respect of many folks here on both sides of the aisle. But do you think that there's anything in your personal experience that kind of shapes the way that you think about the criminal justice system, and might in turn impact the work, like the principles that you bring to this work? Do you think that there's something that's relevant in your personal experience that could be, that could actually help you think about this role that you might have before you now?
Yeah, thanks, Senator. And I think living, being a New Yorker is a unique experience within itself. Being a New Yorker who lives in a community such as East New York or Cypress Hills also has a unique perspective. I grew up at a time where kids were making tough decisions. And I was on the side that kind of decided that I wanted to get an education, and with the support of my community, then turn around and give service to that community that helped sell cupcakes and candy and other things that helped me to get to high school and eventually on to college. Some of my friends on the other side decided to take shortcuts and had to find their way into some of our correctional facilities. I knew their character. I knew they had made mistakes. And as some of those had the opportunity to come back home, they are now outstanding fathers and baseball coaches and other things. Not many of them went through a revolving door of the correctional system. And again, most of them that made these mistakes and then came back home got the same support from the community that helped push me to college. So I think that there is a neighborhood sense, and I think that those are some of the different type of experiences that kind of shaped me and now have me at this point in my life wanting to serve this community by being someone who's going to take the opportunity in order to look at those stories, in order to make the determination on, as Senator Savino said, someone is able to come out early, on time, or whether they need to stay a little bit later. But I think that we need to have folks who are willing to look at the whole story and not just make a determination by a crime that was committed, but to look at the whole picture, the character, and where possibly this person may be able to come once they're back into their communities.
Yeah, you kind of partly answered the question I wanted to go as a follow-up to, in reference to something that some of my colleagues mentioned before, because there's obviously limitations as to what anybody who is appointed to any one of these boards can do, right? You have to operate within the boundaries of the law that establishes what the responsibilities and powers of a commissioner are. In this case, there's a part of an executive law which states, and I'm going to just read it to make sure I get it correct, but parole may be granted if, quote, such release is not incompatible with the welfare of society and will not deprecate the seriousness of the crime as to undermine respect for the law, unquote. So I think that, how do you interpret that? I think you kind of partly answered it in your prior answer, but how do you interpret that, which is part of the responsibility that you will take, that you will potentially take if you are confirmed for this role?
So, Senator, I think generally, here's it in a nutcase for me, right? So I live in Brooklyn, so I would take a.
I'll try not to hold that against you.
At least I got the first two letters right. BR. We can.
Hey,
BR
be
is
nice,
great. Right?
be nice.
And I'm just saying, Gunnar.
But I think that there are people. Excuse me, my phone, home phone.
Yep.
But I think that someone can look at this and say, I sit in Brooklyn, and this person is going to be going, being released and going to Elmira.
Yeah.
I would be looking at each individual case as if they're going to be my neighbor. So
Okay.
I think that that's the way that we have to look at it. Not coming back into the state, into communities, but what determination would I make if this person was my neighbor? I think that that's the way that I would look at things in order to make the determination.
Okay, and one final thing. No, there's differences of opinion certainly amongst us as legislators, amongst people, but in the case of the parole board commissioners, whose responsibility is to, operating within the boundaries of the law as it's currently set, and hopefully some changes that will happen in the future if I pass a couple of my bills, but that's, neither here nor there. You operate within the certain boundaries that are of the powers, as I mentioned earlier, they're already in executive law. And there's a difference of opinion as far as, because there's an individual judgment that has to be made by each parole board commissioner on their decisions. And there is a balance, I guess, that has to be weighed between the seriousness of the original crime, which is something that is obviously never going to change. The person has, if the person has been convicted of that crime, if they've accepted responsibility for it, that's something that's never going to change as compared to whatever rehabilitation has happened in the time, whether the person has been there for a year or 5 or a decade or more, sometimes many decades, and how that relates to public safety if they're potentially released. So where do you see yourself in that spectrum? And as you consider weighing of those options between something that is static and is never changing and something that can, that a person, there's work that the person has done, there's a mistake that they've made on, undoubtedly, but they have done a lot of things since then to try to at least somewhat make up for that. What is your stand on that spectrum?
Yeah, and Senator, by no means do I mean to be flippant on this, but I'm definitely on that spectrum. But I think that the way that the ruler slides is the rest of the story. So it's kind of hard, again, just to talk about it in a generality, because I think that you talked about the scope. These are the lines that I have to operate in, and I think that in order to make the right determination, you have to read that story in order to figure out which arrow you have in your quiver that you can use.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Honorable Daryl, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And Toby Stavisky, did you have a hand up again for a second round, or is it just left up?
No.
No hand up.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Toby.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's no problem. I just wanted to double check. I don't want
I forgot to lower my hand. Sorry about that.
to cut off anyone. So I think we've gotten through all the questions for Daryl Towns. All right. So Daryl, if you don't mind, we're going to ask you to turn off your audio and visual, and we're going to take a vote. Even though
Do I just step out or I just turn off the?
yeah,
audio?
just if you don't mind, just leaving the meeting now. Thank you, though.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a
Now we're
great
just messing with you.
have a great afternoon.
Stop it,
Take care,
Senator Rivera.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Brooklyn
for
rules.
That's right, Brooklyn rules. All right, so now I'd like to ask anyone for a motion to move Darrell Town's nomination.
I move Darrell Town's nomination to the parole board.
I would second.
Okay, I heard Senator Comrie, then I heard Gustavo and Toby Stavisky at the exact same time, so second and third in some order. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, O'Mara, Borello, Sereno.
I'm AWR,
Oh,
Senator,
sorry.
be-
Thank you.
because of the
Senator
process.
Sereno. Okay, AWR for Senator Sereno. Anyone else?
Anywhere.
AWR for Senator Gallivan. Okay, I believe with the voting sheets, we have enough votes to move Mr. Towns to the floor. Gentlemen, want to?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, we do.
thank you. All right, so let's call up the second and last appearance for this meeting today.
The second and last appearing is Renee Delgado, member of the Workers' Compensation Board.
Hi, Renee. Welcome to our meeting. Are you still there? I saw you earlier.
I'm
Yeah.
here.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, so now you just saw Mr. Towns go through this process. So if you would just give us a bit of background on yourself and why you are qualified to join the Workers' Compensation Board.
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Renee Delgado. I want to thank you for the opportunity to join you today at this committee hearing. It is an honor to be nominated by Governor Hochul for a board seat at the Workers' Compensation Board. First, I will share a little bit about myself and my background. And next, I will tell you about the passion and perspective that I will bring to this position. I was born in Troy, New York. My mother raised me and my 4 sisters alone after our father's untimely death at 38 years old. My mother is the person I strive to be. I'm a mother myself to 3 boys and a wife. I am also an attorney and a member of the United Steelworkers. I have been dedicated to the public sector my entire life, whether it was my educational choices or my job choices. I attended all public colleges, including SUNY Albany, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and CUNY School of Law. I attended CUNY after working at the New York City Central Labor Council for a couple of years. But it was CUNY where I found my love and passion for the labor law, the labor movement, and workers' rights. It's there where I first learned about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire and how it led to the passage of the workers' compensation system in New York State. 146 poor, mostly immigrant women working with the exit doors locked to keep them at their sewing machines died that tragic day, burning or leaping to their death as the fire consumed their place of work. Shortly thereafter, the workers' compensation became the lifeline for millions of injured workers. Unlike many other law schools, CUNY afforded me a hands-on, practical approach to learning the law. I spent an entire semester working at the New York State Attorney General's office in its Labor Bureau. I was able to see firsthand the workforce struggles faced by disadvantaged groups such as undocumented workers and other low-wage workers. I won't regurgitate my resume. I am proud of my career as a strong advocate for workers and workers' rights. I held every legal position in PEF, from directly representing individual members in disciplines and grievance disputes, negotiating contracts, overseeing the legal department, drafting union policies, and advising the leadership. At PEF, I saw how workplace illnesses and injuries can be catastrophic and life-changing, or even life-ending for workers and their families. I've seen it with members of PEF becoming ill and in some cases dying from COVID as a result of going to work each day to serve New Yorkers. The last thing any of these individuals should have to worry about is feeding their families or affording medical care. That is where the workers' compensation system can provide hope to workers in their darkest hours. I also know that in many cases, the injured and the ill would never be able to return to work without the treatment provided through the system, providing our employers with the workers they need to succeed, many of whom they have invested in with training and skill development. But I know this is different from the job of being an advocate. I am a lawyer. I know how to research the law, spot issues, and apply the law based on facts. My experience will not disappear should I be confirmed, but it will be an asset to the impressive and diverse knowledge and experience each individual board member brings to their decision-making. I go in with no preconceived notions of how things should work. And on the flip side, I know there are challenges employers face when it comes to the workers' comp system, especially during this pandemic. The workers' comp system and the law is not designed to disadvantage one group over the other, but it is designed to align the interests of both the employee and the employer. The board's mission is about promoting those rights by ensuring the delivery of benefits and promoting compliance with the law. I am reasonable, I am fair, I am ethical and passionate about the law. And lastly, I always maintain professionalism regardless of my role and who sits on the other side of the table. Thank you for your time and consideration. I ask that you provide me with the opportunity to serve the people of New York State as a board member. It is not a duty I take lightly, and I would seek honor in the trust you would be putting me every day through hard work, impartiality, and prudent judgment. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And I think that, I'm sorry, just double checking. One colleague says they can't raise their hand. I think it was George Borello. Is that you, George, who couldn't raise your hand?
Yes, ma'am. That's
That's
yes,
correct.
having a
Yeah.
problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Yes, Ms. Delgado, thanks for testifying today. You know, as a business owner myself, I can tell you that workers' compensation in New York State is the worst. It's extremely expensive. It's largely due to the high amount of litigation and the fact that we have things like the scaffold law, which automatically gives a win to the attorney that's representing the injured, and a number of other reasons. New York State is approximately 22 times more expensive than the state of Pennsylvania. My district borders the state of Pennsylvania for about 100 miles. We lose business and businesses and families every day to Pennsylvania, largely because of the high cost of doing business and certainly the high cost of workers' comp. Every year I get a summary from one of my constituents who owns a manufacturing business in Pennsylvania but lives here in Chautauqua County, and he tells me how much more expensive it is every year just for workers' comp if he were to move his operations back to New York State, which he won't do. So with all that being said, I realize being a commissioner is a different tack. It's not a legislative, it's not a policy issue, but it is a serious issue. And I understand you very much want to support workers. We all do. I think New York State probably has the strongest record when it comes to workers' rights. But how do we control the out of control cost and quite frankly, poor decisions that are made that make us the worst place, most expensive place when it comes to workers' compensation?
Good afternoon, Senator. Well, should I be confirmed, my main role would be to hear the appeals from the ALJs. And again, I would base my decision on the law and the individual facts of each case. I wouldn't, you know, the premium cost, that wouldn't factor into my decision-making. I would look at the law and I would look at the facts and render my decision.
I appreciate that, but you know, part of looking at that is certainly the fact that every case is unique. We understand that, but it does seem like there's a thumb on the scale in New York State, largely because of bad policy. I agree with that, but you know, the costs that are borne as a result of the cases that are decided and how many people end up with workers' comp. And again, we all want to protect workers, but you know, it is those decisions that are made as a commissioner that perhaps aren't necessarily impartial all the time that have led to the costly, oppressive amount of workers' compensation. So I guess I understand what you're saying, but I still have my concerns because I think it's already very one-sided, very lopsided.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Diane Savino.
Thank you, Senator Krueger. Well, first, you are about to undertake a monumental task, and that is helping the workers' compensation system. I'm gonna disagree with my good friend Senator Borello. We agree in principle that we all want to protect workers, but then we get to the point where we only want to do it when it's cheap. Right? The workers' compensation system was not established to be a burden on businesses. In fact, it's supposed to be the opposite. It is a system that provides for health access to treatment and a wage replacement mechanism for workers who are hurt on the job. And in exchange, they agree to not sue their employers. And it's supposed to provide an opportunity for employers to get their employees back to work. That's how it's supposed to work. We all know that that's not how it works. And the problem, as you know, Ms. Delgado, is the inefficiency in the workers' compensation system. The problem where if a worker is injured and they need a special test It takes workers' comp sometimes 2, 3, 4 months to approve that exam, where if they were to just go to their regular doctor and do it through their regular primary care insurance, they could get approval for that MRI within 10 days. Those are the things that I think that the workers' compensation system needs to look at. Why does it take so long to provide treatment for injured workers? The longer it takes to provide them treatment, the longer they're out of work. The longer they're out of work, the more payout comes in the end. They also develop other problems because now they become reliant on medication to deal with their injury. And now we're seeing an increase in the number of injured workers who are becoming addicted to opioids because that's the only treatment that they're being offered while they wait for authorization for the actual treatment they need. I could go on for days as to what's wrong with workers' comp. But the original intent of the program is the valid one. Workers who are injured on the job should have access to treatment, wage replacement. Employers should have a system that avoids them litigation against them, and it's not working the way it was designed. So I hope with your dedication to workers and workers' rights and your understanding of the risks, that you'll go in there and try and right-size this system so we can bring down some of those costs. Because the one thing Senator Borrello is right about, they are too expensive in New York, but it's not going to the worker. It's going to the insurance carriers. It's going to, the premiums are going up. So it costs business more, workers get less, and people are not getting what the workers' comp system was intended for. So I wish you good luck, but you have a unique understanding of workers' issues and what injuries to workers can do. And our goal should always be treatment fast, treatment first, treatment fast, back to work, brings down the costs.
Thank you, Senator.
And Senator Borrello agrees with me in the chat.
Thank you, Senator. Oh, good. You've turned Senator Borrello. So let's see if Senator O'Mara wants to turn him back. Yes, Senator O'Mara.
Yeah, just on that, I don't think Senator Borrello's point was that he wants New York State workers' compensation to be cheap and, the least providing. I think we're just the opposite in New York State, and we should really need to look at the overall costs of our workers' compensation system. And I think that's more effectively certainly a role of the legislature than it is the Workers' Compensation Board. But those costs are exceedingly high in New York State. And just to get on a familiar bandwagon of mine for a while, we still owe the federal government $9.5 billion of COVID expenditures, funds that were borrowed from the federal government that were paid back, many states of which used their COVID relief funds to pay that down. New York State has not paid that down, and those fees, the repayment of those borrowed funds will be thrust upon providers of workers' compensation insurance throughout every employee of New York State. But enough on that. I have a couple questions for you. First and foremost, with the last name Delgado, are you any relation directly or through marriage to our new Lieutenant Governor, Antonio Delgado?
I am not, Senator. No relation.
Thank you. I commend you on your work for workers throughout your career, and your resume is impressive in that regard, but it is one-sided, and it has only been on behalf of labor and the workers, and I don't see any experience in your resume on behalf of business or business ownership and the other side of the equation, so to speak. And while we all agree that our compensation should provide reasonable and just compensation for workers injured on the job, the system does have a fair amount of abuse and fraud within it. Can you tell us how, with your really one-sided background on behalf of workers and labor, how you're going to see the perspective of the business owner, the employer?
Sure. As a lawyer, I will read the law, look at the facts of each case, and render my decision impartially. As you can see from my resume, I did leave PEF for a short time, and I went to the Department of Labor as management I worked on DHR cases against employees on behalf of management. I did that because eventually I would like to be an arbitrator because I feel as though I'm fair, I'm impartial. I can render decisions based on what is presented before me and not based on my own values and beliefs.
Okay, I thank you for that. I think one final question I have is your spouse, Ryan Delgado, a commissioner of the board for the New York State Insurance Fund?
Yes, that's my husband.
How is that not going to create a conflict of interest for you on cases, as the New York State Insurance Fund is the largest workers' comp insurer in the state, nearly 50% or perhaps more of all businesses as a last resort insurer in New York State, and a large percentage of the cases coming before the Workers' Compensation Board, 50% or more, you will be conflicted out of. How is that fair to the other members of the Workers' Compensation Board who are earning a salary of $160,000 as you will be?
Well, Senator, I don't believe that would be the case. If there's any ethical concerns about me hearing a case, obviously we would research that. I would consult the general counsel and the ethics officer at the department. My husband, it is an unpaid position, and to my knowledge, he doesn't get involved in individual claims at his level. So we don't see that I would have to recuse myself from 50% as the number you put out there. So I have to disagree with that. But of course, if there's any ethical concerns, even with anyone who appears before me, we will consult with counsel.
Was that issue of conflict part of any of your discussions with the executive chamber leading up to your nomination here today?
It was fully disclosed, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Senator.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other hands up, I'm going to ask Ms. Delgado to excuse herself from the meeting now, and then we will take our vote. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Okay. Do I see a motion to move Ms. Delgado? Senator Savino, Senator Gustavo Rivera seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, I see O'Mara, Borrello, Gallivan. Is it possible Sue Serino still here, but I didn't hear her? Nope. Okay.
Madam Chair, can I explain my vote?
Of course you can, Senator Gallivan.
My negative vote has more to do with the process in this particular case. I know I raised it before and others have, but in this case, we'll be considering other names today. There are 5 appointments total to the Workers' Compensation Board. 4 of them are reappointments. And it's troubling without any explanation. We've got somebody thrown off the board who was seemingly doing their job and replaced by this otherwise seemingly qualified individual, but there's no evidence that the person on the board was not doing their job. Now, if the governor, of course, the governor has it in her prerogative to do that, but if the board was performing properly, it would seem they all would be reappointed, as she saw fit to reappoint 4 out of 5. If it was not doing their job properly, then it would seem to me that we would have 5 reappointments. So for those reasons, I'll be voting in the negative.
Okay. Senator Gallivan, any without recommendations? I never really closed out the vote. Okay, I don't see without any recommendations. Just before Jalen confirms for me that we have the votes, I think, Senator Gallivan, for the record, the Senate has no role in deciding whether someone is removed from a board or not reappointed. That is totally the governor's prerogative. And I mean, you may have additional information. I was not provided with information of why a previous commissioner is not continuing to serve. So you may know something I don't, but that is between, I think, the governor's office and that person. So we don't have control over that storyline, just to clarify.
Your point is well taken, and I do not have additional information. But that's part of my concern coming from the governor's office that others have expressed. We often get information very, very late, if at all. And that was a point that I wanted to bring up, but your point is well taken. Thank you.
And our information is too late, as quite a few have pointed out, but we wouldn't have gotten information about why a person was leaving a board regardless. I don't think that's ever information we're offered. Jalen, do we have enough votes to move Ms. Delgado to the floor?
Yes, we do.
Thank you very much. And now I know we're running a little late. I'm sorry, everyone, but now we're going to read, or Jalen's going to read for us, the master list of other nominees who are not being interviewed today, although many of them were interviewed by their other committees of reference, and many of them are renewals. So Jalen, if you'd please start to just read the names down. I know it's a long list.
First, we have Jill Rabin, member of the Administrative Review Board for Professional Medical Conduct. Michael Reichgott, member of the Administrative Review Board for Professional Medical Conduct. Wayne L. Kaplan, Continuing Care Retirement Community Council. Michael Pratt, member of the Correction Medical Review Board. Alicia Glenn, Commissioner of the Gateway Development Commission. Isabel Medora Valdiva Espino, member of the Metropolitan Transport Authority. Blanca Lopez, also a member. Lisa Soren, member, also a member. Frankie Miranda, also a member. Sheriff Soilman, also a member. Samuel Chu, also a member. And Luis Freddy Milano, member of the Minority Health Council. Marissa J. Shorenstein, also a member of the New York State Gaming Commission. Brian O'Dwyer, member of the New York State Gaming Commission. Chester B. Edwards II, member of Board of Visitors for the New York State Home for Veterans and their dependents at Montrose. Staniel D'Elia, member of the Port Oswego Authority. Kathleen Macy, also a member of the Port Oswego Authority. Denise Soffel, member of the Public Health and Planning Council. Kenneth R. Theobalds, Commissioner of the State Insurance Fund. Lily Fan, Commissioner of the State Liquor Authority. John Wang, Director of Urban Development Corporation. Robert M. Simpson, also Director of the Urban Development Corporation. Stephen A. Crane, members of the Workers' Compensation Board. Frida D. Foster, member, Vice Chair of the Workers' Compensation Board. Mark Daniel Higgins, member of the Workers' Compensation Board, and also Samuel G. Williams.
Okay. And was there a second page, or did we get through everyone?
That's everyone.
That is everyone. Thank you. All right. So is there, I see Tom O'Mara's hand. Yes, Tom.
Oh, no, it's still up. Sorry, I never took it down.
Oh, okay.
Madam
So,
Chair,
yes, Senator.
one question. Just want to double check and make sure. Since I'm a liquor license holder, do I need to recuse myself on the appointment to the State Liquor Authority? Is there any thought on that?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I don't think we've ever addressed that. My guess would be it's safer for you to recuse yourself from the SLA votes, but I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I know one of them is a New York City SLA. She's very unlikely to be reviewing your location in upstate New York. I'm not sure.
I've been looking at a few places in Manhattan near you, so no, I'm kidding.
No, you're welcome to go to our bars, but I didn't realize you owned any of them.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think just to be safe, since we don't have legal counsel, if it's okay with you and the rest of the members, I would recuse myself from any that are related to any of the State Liquor Authority, whether it be upstate or New York City, just to be safe.
Absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind just marking your voting sheet, or if you've already turned it into Jalen, Jalen will make a note of that now on your voting sheet for you.
Okay.
So be
Thank you.
recused from the SLA vote.
Senator, before we close the vote, I just wanted to remind, I think there was a line missing on the page that Jalen was reading from, and Lisa Gomez from DASNY is also on the list.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that's very important to know. Thank you.
So it's missing from the voting sheet as well.
Oh,
I don't see it on the voting sheet.
can you confirm that, Andrew or
Oh,
Jalen?
no, I do. I do see it. It's up higher up. It's about the fifth one down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Thank you all for being so. See, there's another reason when you get rushed, things don't necessarily come out perfectly. All right. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment on any of the individuals that they would or wouldn't like to vote for, or raise the other issues before I just ask for an across the board vote? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed across the board? Without rec?
Without rec.
Tom O'Mara, George Borello. I don't see Pat Gallivan's hand. I don't see Sue Savino. Okay, I think just the two without rec. And again, rather than asking you all to individually check off for us verbally whether you have any problems with them, if you just make sure that if you have any no votes for individuals, if you would put it on your voting sheet or share it with Jalen after the meeting so that he has the correct recording. But I don't believe there will be enough in any individual case where we could not move these nominees to the floor. And no one's arguing with me right now, so I'm going to accept that as the logical answer. And with that, I'm going to thank you all very much for coming to a second meeting of finance when we're not actually up in Albany in session. Appreciate everyone's cooperation. And these people will come to the floor one of the days next week. I don't know which one. So I hope you all have a great weekend.